I think we have to start this topic with Jérémy Jacquet, the young defender who joined Liverpool in January. And he recently had a market value upgrade. He went from 20 million euros to 55 million euros, which is a huge upgrade. Do you want to maybe explain the reasoning behind that upgrade? Obviously, he's moved to Liverpool, but I'm sure there's more to it than that as well.
Hi, Stefan. I'm glad to be here on this podcast. Yeah, of course, because Jeremy Jacquet is by far the biggest rise of this update, I think by more than 20 million above the highest other raise in this update in Ligue 1. And of course, we saw the potential of this player early this season. He played a rather important role in the defense of Stade Rennes, but it's been almost his first complete season as a professional in Ligue 1 because almost a year ago, he was just a player on loan in the second tier in France, in Clermont. So it was quite a fast rise to fame and to a higher level for him. So it was a bit tough to judge. Even last winter, I think we went from 10 or 12 million euros to 20. And it was, and despite all the noise that was already around him, like we know he will be a topic in this winter transfer window, but we couldn't expect this bit of a bidding war because, of course, he went to sign with Liverpool, but it wasn't the only club interested. It probably that played also a part in the final fee that got around him that could rise, I think, with a bonus above 70 million euros. So that's really impressive also for a French defender. Even if we know it's a really trendy type of players, especially for English teams, that was a great surprise to see him rise this much in interest for other clubs in Europe. And so, of course, we need to match or get close to match the fee that he was paid for, which was around 63 something million euros. So we decided to go with 55 million for this update because, like I said, of course we see a lot of his potential, and around the last season he played, we see the level he could achieve, but it's also just one full season of professional football at the highest level. And one could argue that between Stade Rennes, who hasn't been in European competition for the past few seasons, compared to one of the greats of Europe like Liverpool, there's also a further step that needs to be made. So we would wait to see how he would adapt to this next step, to maybe see if we need to reach completely this fee or pass it in the next months, even if that will be the UK team issue then. But yeah. But of course, we also know that since almost a month ago already, he got a shoulder injury against Lens, and for a few weeks they were wondering if he could really heal from it. But now he will go to. Has been said that he will go to surgery, so it's almost sure that his season will be over, or it will be like a comeback in early March. And would it make sense for him to come back just for the last couple of games and risk another injury? Or probably Liverpool would rather want for him to be really safe, preserve him for the next season with Liverpool, and have him in the best of conditions for a clean start with his new club.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to rush him back from injury too soon. There's an interesting parallel here to Lenny Yoro, who made the move to Manchester United for just slightly less money. It's only a few million euros in it. He hasn't really quite got going at Manchester United just yet. Maybe not all his fault. There's obviously been a lot of turnover with managers and players, and Manchester United have only really just started playing well in the last maybe 2 or 3 months. So a lot of factors outside of his control, but some people may question whether Liverpool have spent a lot of money on a young defender who doesn't have a huge amount of experience at senior level, and may look to draw comparisons to Lenny Yoro in sense of saying, well, they spent a lot of money on a player with a lot of potential, but is Jacquet ready to play in the Premier League for Liverpool next season, assuming he gets over his shoulder injury? But of course, Rono, you've watched a lot of him this season. What have you made of his performances before he got injured? And do you think he has that potential to be a star for Liverpool and to live up to that transfer fee?
In a way, I see the comparison with Euro, but it's also not really the same case, because Euro really exploded at a really young age. I think he started for Lille around 16 years old, while in this modern football era, Jacquet is almost a late bloomer, like he's around 20 years old, and we really saw him arrive since barely a year. So it's Jacquet had a bit of more years to perfect his craft in the academies and not have the spotlight on him so soon. So, but indeed, from what I could see, and I say this, I'm a fan of Stade Rennes, so I've got to see him up close in a few games this season at the stadium. And from what I saw, he's been really an interesting player. Even if we know players from this age, we can always find things that will need amelioration and a few other things like that. But he's been really well composed in defense. And for the past the start of the season, Rennes was playing with a back three in defense, and it was quite a rather stable composition around him. But it was, I think, the most used of these three center backs, and we don't really see the fact that he's only a 19, 20-year-old player when we saw him defend. But it's player that has a great vision of the game. Is because like when we see his like his height, for example, we could think, oh, he's just a basic type of center back who would be great for headers or a few things like that. But he has a lot more qualities. Like I said, great vision of the game. He's not so static in his area. He can really progress a few meters with the ball to relaunch an action for his side. So he's I think he's much more for his team that what is just like what his CV will say with his height or a few performances. Like when we see him on the pitch, we see he's much more than just a classic center back. I think we could also almost imagine from what his qualities are that in some aspects we could see him use maybe at some point like a defensive midfielder and number 6, depending on what Liverpool wants to play. But yes, indeed, I see the English point of view that Euro hasn't really proven himself in Manchester United after almost 2 years now, 1 year and a half, 2 years of joining the Premier League. But I think uh, it will be a bit tough to judge for Jacquet in the few first months because it will be only third club because he's had his half season in loan in Ligue 2 and now around a full season between 2 seasons in Ligue 1, and now he will have to jump into an higher level with European competitions. That will also be a first for him. So I think there is a lot of factors that makes it tough to really assess what will be the use of Jacquet in the first months in Liverpool. But let's hope that the fee around him and the rising value that he just had will not weigh too much on his shoulder. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really interesting insight there. I hadn't even considered the possibility of him playing in midfield or as a defensive midfielder, but I'm sure that will come as welcome news to Liverpool fans.